What's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte. And as we're starting to wrap things up here on this season preview series today, we're taking a look up in what some would argue the mecca of hockey, the hockey world up in Toronto. The Toronto Maple Leafs are going to continue our season preview series today. If you guys have not checked out the rest of the series, make sure to do so. But with that out of the way, let's get into this. So the Toronto Maple Leafs, Kyle Dubas took some criticism. Shocking, right? Because of the lack of moves, right? It's been years after year after year now. We've been hearing that, this Leafs team is supposed to be the team. This year's team is going to be the team. This year, and you get the theme, right? But something was different about this loss in the first round this year, right? They played the Tampa Bay Lightning, and you knew it was going to be a tough matchup. And the way they fared in that series is different than what we've seen in years past, right? You could make the argument, well, they found another way to lose, fair. But they also played the team that won back-to-back Stanley Cups and has been to the Stanley Cup final the last 3 straight seasons, and they took them to 7 games, let alone. And they actually led this series and had Tampa up against the wall in 2 elimination games and just couldn't get it done. But the Toronto Maple Leafs left you wondering with some of the moves they made, and we're going to take a look at those moves today. So, when you look at what the team was last year, right, you had Freddie Anderson, you had a mix of guys like Ilya Mikheyev, a couple of depth guys that have ultimately left in free agency. And when you look at their stats last year, goals for, they were second best in the National Hockey League. I think that's pretty good, right? So they can obviously score goals. This is a goal-scoring team. The core 4 up front, they were scoring dynamo. Not a problem. But then goals against, and it was still pretty good, but it was technically below league average. It was 18th best in the National Hockey League, despite having great goaltending in what most would argue in Jack Campbell for most of the season. They still finished below average in terms of goals against. So is that a knock on the defense, or is that the goaltending? And again, Jack Campbell was out for a decent amount of last season throughout certain points with injury, and the options behind him were not good at all in Mrazek and Shalgren. And that's not a knock against Shalgren because he was a rookie last year, but even with Mrazek as well, they just were not very good. So with Campbell going to the Oilers in free agency and trading out Mrazek, well, now there seems to be a new change in between the pipes with Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov coming in via trade and signing. Ilya Samsonov was a promising prospect of the Washington Capitals. Never really fared very well in Hershey with the Hershey Bears, the American Hockey League affiliate of the Caps. And it never translated to the NHL either. And I think when Holtby left, they kind of forced Samsonov into the NHL before he was truly ready. And he did have a little bit of an adjustment period in North America. He was used to playing in Russia. He put up some video game numbers in the KHL. And then when he came over to the States, he struggled. So the expectation was maybe on a better defense in Washington, he would do better. And it just didn't really go anywhere, right? He never really was that great goaltender they were hoping for. And even a competent starting goaltender for that matter. So to the point where they let him go in free agency. So Ilya Samsonov is still very young. I think this might be the best signing that the Leafs had this summer. We're going to remember in, say, 3 or 4 years from now, and I hope I'm right on this, but Ilya Samsonov might end up being the best acquisition this summer for the Leafs. At least that's what we're hoping for, right? Obviously, Matt Murray comes in via trade. That one I'm a little more on the fence about, because this is a guy that has not been able to stay healthy. So I honestly, with bringing in Murray, I would expect Murray to be the 1B goaltender, Samsonov the 1A, and Shalgren a very close 2 behind Matt Murray because of his health. Matt Murray is not a reliable goaltender, and that's why a lot of people speculated why the Leafs would even go after that. But that's what they decided to do. No changes on the blue line. I expect to see more of the younger guys that the Leafs already have to kind of jump in there. The Rasmus Sandins, the Timothy Lojigrens of the world in Toronto will get more ice time. But up front, though, they made some acquisitions to their bottom 6, bringing in Nicolas Aube-Kubel, who was coming off of a Stanley Cup in Colorado. A pretty nice acquisition there. Was really developing most of his career in the Lehigh Valley with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms and with, obviously, the Philadelphia Flyers. Got placed on waivers, wasn't very good, and then he ends up going to Colorado and wins the Cup. So I would say pretty successful season for him last year, so hopefully he can build off of that. And Kalle Järnkrok, who's kind of been bouncing around the league a little bit. His most recent stop was in Seattle. He was a very good player in Seattle, and he was an even better player in Nashville during those cup runs in the late 2010s. I think it was 2017, 2018, when Nashville went to the Stanley Cup Final. Kalle Järnkrok was a big part of that, and he's a guy that can score in the postseason. He could score those big goals late in the third period and overtime, and I think that's what the Leafs need, is that secondary depth scoring. Kalle Järnkrok can do that. Not to mention he's also a great penalty killer. And that's kind of what the Leafs are looking at here, right? You know, you're looking at the acquisitions and the guys that went out the door. They kind of had an even split, if you could say that, right? I would say Samsonov is an upgrade in Campbell as long as he could put up similar numbers, which is tough. That is a tough task, but I think Samsonov is capable of that. And I would say Murray is a better option than Peter Mrazek from last season. So in the sense that maybe they didn't get that much incredibly better, they did get better in between the pipes. And you consider Kalle Järnkrok for Ilya Mikheyev. That one's a little tough, but I like Kalle Järnkrok. Again, in terms of the cap and the salary cap situation, I would take Kalle Järnkrok. So Kalle Järnkrok can be that type of player. And Nicolas Aube-Kubel, again, he's kind of a replacement to like a Wayne Simmons or a guy in the bottom six that, again, it's nice to have, but is not a huge loss in that sense. So looking at the Maple Leafs, I think they're still a very good hockey team. I think a lot of people are really throwing them under because of the whole goalie situation. I'm not necessarily on that stance. I think the Leafs will continue to be one of those top three teams in the Atlantic Division. I think they're one of those three teams, being the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Florida Panthers, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think those are the top three teams. And then at least they're not one of those other, say, 3 or 4 teams in the Atlantic, meaning Boston, Buffalo, Detroit, and Ottawa, because I think their futures are a little bit more uncertain in terms of making the playoffs in 2023. I have the Leafs as, unless barring a huge injury to one of their star players or multiple star players, I do have the Leafs making the playoffs in 2023. And this is a team that if the Leafs get past the first round, I think they could easily get to the conference finals. I don't want to jinx them. We're still a year away from even talking about playoffs at this point. But I think the Leafs have what it takes. This is what you have to go through. You have to go through that grind and just that agony and the pain and the suffering. And obviously the hockey gods, for whatever you believe of them or not, they don't think the Leafs have proven yet enough suffering. And I think that the fan base would agree with that. But I think this is the year where if the Leafs get that hump off their back in terms of losing in the first round, if they get past the first round, the Leafs can go as far as they possibly can in the postseason. I think it's just the hardest battle is winning that first round and getting that mentally out of their head. So guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What do you think of the Toronto Maple Leafs offseason additions / some of the guys they lost this year? And what are your expectations for 2023? Do they make the playoffs? How far in the playoffs do they get? Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time.